They called me defective long before I understood what the word meant. It was spoken in hushed voices, behind closed doors, carried in glances that lingered too long on my fragile body. By the time I reached 19, after 3 doctors examined me, measured me, prodded me, and pronounced their verdict, I had learned to wear the word myself like a label stitched into my skin. My name is Thomas Beaumont Callahan. I am 19 years old, and my body has never truly been mine. It has betrayed me from the moment I entered the world, a body that resisted growth, that refused to become what nature and society demanded of it, bone and muscle that never quite aligned with expectation, a vessel that looked human, yet felt unfinished, as though I had been abandoned midway through creation. I was born in January of 1840, 2 months too early, during one of the coldest winters Mississippi had endured in decades. The river froze at its edges that year. Crops failed. Animals died in their pens. And I, small, blue-lipped, struggling for breath, arrived not as a blessing, but as an interruption. My mother, Sarah Beaumont Callahan, went into labor in the middle of a dinner party my father was hosting. Judges, planters, men of influence filled our house that evening, their laughter echoing through rooms heavy with cigar smoke and ambition. Plates were abandoned mid-meal when my mother screamed. Servants scattered. Order dissolved. I was born upstairs in a bed soaked with blood and fear. The woman who delivered me was Mama Ruth, an enslaved midwife who had brought more white children into the world than any doctor in the county. Her hands were steady, her eyes experienced. She had seen life cling stubbornly to breath, and she had seen it slip away. When she looked at me, she did not smile. She held me briefly, then shook her head. "Judge Callahan," she said quietly, "this baby won't make it through the night. He's too small. His breathing's shallow. Best prepare your wife for the loss." Those words should have ended me, but my mother refused to let them. She was burning with fever, exhausted beyond reason. Yet when they tried to take me from her arms, she clutched me closer. Her voice was weak but certain. "He'll live," she whispered. "I know he will. I can feel his heart. It's weak, but it's fighting." She pressed me against her chest as though she could will strength into my bones. And somehow, impossibly, I lived. I survived the night. Then another still. But survival is not the same as thriving. Survival is merely persistence. It is existing without promise. At 1 month old, I weighed barely 6 pounds. At 6 months, I could not lift my own head. At 1 year, while other children pulled themselves upright and stumbled forward on uncertain legs, I remained limp and dependent. Each milestone I missed etched another quiet disappointment into my father's face. Doctors came from every direction. From Natchez, from Vicksburg, from New Orleans. They examined me with professional detachment, whispering among themselves, writing notes, exchanging looks they thought I did not see. Their conclusion was always the same: premature birth, developmental arrest, permanent frailty. I was 6 years old when my mother died. Yellow fever swept through Mississippi in 1846 like divine punishment. It did not discriminate between rich and poor, between master and slave. It took my mother swiftly, cruelly. I remember her skin, yellowed and papery, her eyes distant, already slipping somewhere I could not follow. The day before she died, she called me to her bed. "Thomas," she whispered, her voice barely there, "your life will not be easy. People will look at you and see weakness. They will underestimate you. They will pity you. They will dismiss you." She paused, gathering strength. "But you have something more valuable than physical power. You have your mind, your heart, your soul. Never let anyone make you believe you are less than whole." She died the next morning. At the time, I did not understand her words. They seemed kind but meaningless. Only later, through humiliation, isolation, and pain did their truth begin to surface. My father was everything I was not. Judge William Callahan stood 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, commanding. His voice could silence a courtroom with a single word. He had built his fortune from nothing, transforming a modest inheritance into an 8,000-acre cotton empire through ruthlessness, intelligence, and relentless ambition. Callahan Plantation sat on high bluffs overlooking the Mississippi River, 15 miles south of Natchez. The soil was among the richest in the South. The house, a Greek Revival mansion, stood like a monument to dominance: white brick, towering Doric columns, wide galleries, and tall windows that captured the river breeze. Inside, crystal chandeliers glittered above imported furniture and Persian rugs. Rooms large enough for 100 guests echoed with wealth, Behind the mansion lay the truth, the cotton gin, the workshops, the overseer's house, and beyond them the quarters. Rows of cramped cabins where 300 enslaved people lived lives stripped of dignity, sustaining the luxury I had been born into. I grew up in this world without understanding it. Wealth and brutality coexisted seamlessly unquestioned. Because of my weakness, I was educated at home. I learned Greek and Latin, philosophy and history, mathematics and poetry. Books became my refuge. Knowledge became the only place where my body did not matter. By 19, I stood barely 5 feet 2 inches tall. My chest curved inward. My hands trembled. My eyesight was so poor I needed thick spectacles to see the world clearly. My voice never fully deepened, and beneath my clothes lay the final betrayal. My body had failed to become fully male. Doctors confirmed it. My father suspected it. I was sterile. From that moment, my future collapsed. Everything that mattered in my father's world, legacy, inheritance, lineage, ended with me. And that was when desperation began to rot his judgment. The silence between my father and me had grown into something solid, something that followed me like a shadow. Words had failed us days ago, and now even the house seemed to conspire to keep us apart. I knew I could not wait inside Delilah's cabin. That would invite questions I wasn't prepared to answer, suspicions that could turn deadly for her. So I walked. I walked until the gravel paths blurred beneath my feet, until the great house loomed behind me like a watchful judge, until my thoughts tangled themselves into knots I could not undo. I kept rehearsing what I would say to her, but every version sounded either cruel or cowardly. How do you warn someone that their life is about to be reduced to a transaction? That their body has already been discussed, measured, and decided upon in rooms where they were never meant to enter? The sun was sinking when the field hands finally returned. Their figures emerged from the far edge of the land like ghosts pulled from the earth itself, slow, weary, shoulders sagging beneath the weight of a day that had taken more than it gave. 10 hours under the March sun leaves its mark. I saw it in the way they walked, in the way no one spoke unless necessary. And then I saw her. Delilah. She moved differently from the others. Taller, straighter, as if refusing, quietly, stubbornly, to let the day bend her completely. Fatigue was there, unmistakable, but beneath it was something else. Control. Awareness. A dignity that unsettled me more than open defiance ever could. When her eyes found me standing near her cabin, she stopped. Master Thomas. The word landed heavily. Around her others slowed, their gazes flicking between us. Whispers followed almost instantly, low and urgent. The master's son waiting at a slave cabin. It was not done. Everyone knew that. Delilah, I said, forcing my voice to remain steady. I need to speak with you. It's important. May I? I gestured toward her cabin, feeling every watching eye like a blade against my back. She hesitated. Just a moment. Then she nodded. Yes, sir. Inside, the cabin felt smaller than I remembered. 12 by 14 feet, maybe less. Dirt floor packed hard by years of use. Walls of rough planks that let in the cold in winter and the heat in summer. A fireplace sat unused, its ashes long gone. 3 pallets lay against one wall, thin and uneven. A crude table, 2 stools, a handful of cooking pots. Clothes hung from wooden pegs, faded and worn. This was it. This was where 3 human beings lived, dreamed, suffered. The image of my own bedroom rose uninvited in my mind, the 4-poster bed, the imported furniture, the books lining the walls, the soft carpets underfoot. The contrast struck me, so sharply that for a moment I couldn't breathe. Delilah stood in the center of the room, hands clasped in front of her, waiting. Is something wrong, Master Thomas? The question was polite, neutral, safe. Where to begin? How do you shatter someone's sense of what little stability they have left? Delilah. I began, then stopped. My mouth felt dry. There's something my father is planning, something that involves you. Her face changed instantly, not with fear, not yet, but with caution. Her features smoothed into something unreadable, a mask perfected by necessity. Yes, sir. So I told her. I told her about my sterility. Words that tasted bitter even as I spoke them. About my father's desperation for heirs, his obsession with preserving the Callahan name. About the man he intended to bring from another plantation. About the legal maneuvering, the cold, calculated way her children would be taken and reshaped into something acceptable for polite society. As the truth unfolded, I watched it strike her piece by piece. Shock widened her eyes. Horror tightened her jaw. And then, slowly, something settled over her, a resignation so deep it frightened me more than anger ever could. When I finished, the cabin was silent. Finally, she spoke. So, she said quietly, the judge plans to use me like a broodmare. The word cut deep. Yes, I said. And I wanted you to know. I wanted to warn you so you could, I don't know. Prepare. Resist if possible. My voice faltered. Though I know how little choice you really have. She looked at me then, truly looked at me, curiosity pushing past fear. Why? She asked. Why are you telling me this? Why do you care what happens to me? The question exposed me more thoroughly than any accusation ever could. Why did I care? I had lived my entire life cushioned by slavery. Every comfort I'd known rested on the labor of people like her. I had never questioned it. Not really. So why now? Because it's wrong, I said at last. Not just in some distant moral way, but here, now. Wrong in a way I can't ignore. You think slavery's wrong, she said, skepticism threading her voice. I think, I said slowly, searching for words that wouldn't lie, that I've been reading things I wasn't meant to read, thinking thoughts I wasn't meant to think. And when my father spoke about you as if you were livestock, something in me refused to accept it. You still own slaves, she replied calmly. Your father still owns me. Yes, I said. And I don't have an answer for that. I may never. But I couldn't stay silent. She sat down heavily on one of the stools. Then what am I supposed to do, Master Thomas? If I refuse, I'm punished. If I resist, I'm sold or killed. There's no escape from this. There might be. The words slipped out before I could stop them. She looked up sharply. What? There might be a way out, I said. If you escaped. Her expression hardened. Escape to where? We're in Mississippi. There are patrols everywhere. I have no papers, no money, no safe place. I'd be caught within a day. What if you had papers? I pressed. Money. Someone with you. She stared at me, realization dawning slowly, dangerously. What are you saying? I'm saying. I took a breath that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, that we leave. Together. Silence. Then a bitter laugh. If we're caught, I die, she said. You go to prison, I know. And if we succeed, she continued, you lose everything. Less. All that, she said. Eyes never leaving mine. For one slave. For one life. I said quietly. Because I can't save everyone. But I can save you. The night crept closer around the cabin. Shadows stretching across the floor. Outside, the plantation settled into its familiar rhythm, unaware that something fragile and dangerous was being born within these walls. Finally, Delilah spoke again. Give me 2 days, she said. If we do this, we do it right. I nodded, my heart pounding. Thursday night. Midnight. The stable. As I walked back toward the mansion. The weight of what I had agreed to pressed down on me. I was planning to steal my father's property. That was how the law would see it, and flee north with her. If we failed, she would likely be killed. If we succeeded, I didn't know what awaited us. Freedom. Death. Something in between. But one thing was certain. There was no turning back now. And somewhere in the darkness, unseen but ever present, the hunt had already begun. We rode in silence for a while. The plantation fell away behind us, and soon we were on the main road heading northeast. The night was clear, the moon bright enough to see by. Every sound made my heart race. Was that a patrol? Was that someone following us? But it was just wind, animals, the normal sounds of a Mississippi night. After an hour, Delilah spoke again. Thomas, can I call you Thomas? Of course. We're not master and slave anymore. We're just two people trying to get north. Thomas, I need to ask you something honestly. Why are you really doing this? And I don't want the noble answer about stopping one evil. I want the real reason. I thought about that as the horses plodded on. The real reason. I think I've spent my entire life being told I'm defective. That I'm less than a real man because my body doesn't work right. That I'm worthless because I can't produce heirs. And I've internalized that. I've believed it. I don't see what that has to do with helping me. My father's plan would have used you the same way society has used me. Reduced you to your reproductive function. Treated you as valuable only for what you could produce. And I realized I couldn't participate in doing to someone else what's been done to me. Does that make sense? Yes, she said quietly. It makes perfect sense. We traveled through the night and into the dawn. As the sun rose, we pulled off the road into a grove of trees. I unhitched the horses and let them graze. Delilah and I ate some of the food I'd brought. Bread, cheese, dried meat. We should sleep in shifts. Delilah said, Take turns keeping watch in case anyone comes. You should sleep first. You worked all day yesterday. I just worried. All right. Wake me in a few hours. She lay down on a blanket and was asleep almost instantly. I watched her for a moment, this woman I barely knew, who I was risking everything to help escape. She looked younger in sleep, less guarded. The intelligence she normally hid was visible in the peaceful lines of her face. What had I done? I'd thrown away my entire life on an impulse to save one person from one specific evil. It was irrational, possibly foolish, definitely dangerous. But it was also the first time in my life I'd felt like I was actually doing something that mattered. Over the next 13 days, we made our way slowly north. We traveled at night, slept during the day, avoided towns where possible. I used the forged travel passes 3 times when we were stopped by patrols or passed through checkpoints. Each time, my heart raced as the patrol officer examined the documents. Says here you're traveling on Judge Callahan's business, escorting his property to Vicksburg for sale. That's correct, officer. The judge needs to liquidate some assets, and Delilah here is prime stock. Should fetch a good price. And why is the judge's son doing this instead of an overseer? Father wanted me to learn the business. Can't run a plantation if you don't understand all aspects of it. The officer would hand back the papers and wave us through. Each time, I'd keep my face calm until we were out of sight, then nearly collapse with relief. Delilah was remarkable during the journey. She was stronger than me, more capable, more resourceful. When a wheel came loose, she fixed it. When we needed to ford a stream, she waded in first to check the depth. When we ran low on food, she knew which plants were edible and how to set snares for rabbits. Where did you learn all this? I asked one night as we ate rabbit she'd caught and cooked. You learn things when you're enslaved. You pay attention to everything, because knowledge might be the difference between surviving and dying. I watched the men fix wagons. I learned plants from women who gathered herbs. I learned to hunt from my father before he was sold away when I was 10. I'm sorry about your father. Don't be sorry. Just keep moving north. We talked during those long nights of travel. Really talked, in ways I'd never talked to anyone. Delilah told me about her life. Born on a plantation in Alabama. Sold to my father when she was 15. 9 years of fieldwork that should have broken her, but didn't. She told me about dreams of freedom she'd barely allowed herself to have. About the constant vigilance required to survive slavery. About watching friends sold away. Sisters raped by overseers, mothers separated from children. I told her about my life. The isolation of being sickly and strange. The education that set me apart. The loneliness of having wealth but no real friends. The shame of being called defective. The growing realization that my comfortable life was built on others' suffering. You're not defective, she said one night. You're different. There's a distinction. Society doesn't see it that way. Society's wrong about a lot of things. Wrong about slavery, wrong about women, wrong about you. By the time we crossed into Tennessee, something had shifted between us. We weren't master and former slave anymore. We weren't even just traveling companions. We were 2 people who'd begun to genuinely care about each other. It was Delilah who first voiced it. We'd stopped to rest in a barn we'd found abandoned. It was raining hard outside, and we decided to wait out the storm. Thomas, can I ask you something personal? Of course. When we get north, when I'm free. What happens then between us? I mean, I've been thinking about the same question. I don't know. I suppose we'll find you a place to live, help you get settled, find you work. Maybe I'll stay nearby in case you need help. But you'll be free to make your own choices. What if? She hesitated. What if my choice is to stay with you? My heart skipped. Delilah, you don't owe me anything. I didn't help you escape expecting. I know that. But what if it's not about owing? What if it's about wanting? I don't understand. She moved closer. Thomas, over these past 2 weeks, I've gotten to know you. Really know you. Not as Master Thomas. Not as the judge's defective son. But as Thomas, the person. And that person is kind and intelligent and brave in ways he doesn't even recognize. I'm not brave. I'm weak and sickly. And you gave up everything to help me. You risked imprisonment and death. You're traveling through hostile territory to bring me to freedom. That's not weakness. That's courage. Delilah. Even if you feel this way now, you might feel differently when you have real freedom. When you can make choices without desperation or gratitude clouding your judgment. Then let me make this choice now, as clearly and freely as I can. She took my hand. When we get north, I want to stay with you. Not as your property, not as your servant, not out of obligation, but as your partner, your companion. Maybe even, she hesitated, maybe even more than that, if you'd want it. You can't want that. I'm sterile. I can't give you children. I can barely give you physical affection. My body is so weak and underdeveloped that I don't even know if I could. Thomas, stop. I don't care about children. I don't care about your body. I care about you. The person who reads philosophy and treats me like an equal. Who listens when I talk. Who sees me as human. That's what I want. People will judge us. A white man and a black woman together. It's illegal in most places. Even in the North we'll face prejudice. I've faced prejudice my whole life. At least this way. I'd face it with someone I choose to be with rather than someone who owns me. I looked at her. This strong, intelligent, beautiful woman who somehow impossibly seemed to want to be with me. Are you sure? I'm sure. We kissed there in that abandoned barn, rain drumming on the roof. Two people from completely different worlds finding something neither had expected to find. We reached Cincinnati in early June, having traveled for nearly 2 months. The city was bustling, crowded, full of free black people and abolitionists and escaped slaves building new lives. I used some of my remaining money to rent a small house in a neighborhood where interracial couples, while uncommon, weren't unheard of. We presented ourselves as husband and wife. Thomas and Delilah Freeman. Freeman, because Delilah had no last name as a slave, and she chose that one for its obvious symbolism. The first few months were hard. Money was tight. I found work as a clerk in a law office. My education and neat handwriting were valuable skills. Delilah found work as a seamstress, and her strong hands that had picked cotton now created beautiful clothes. People stared at us. Some assumed Delilah was my property. Others assumed she was my mistress. A few understood we were actually married, and their reactions ranged from disapproval to acceptance. But we built a life. A real life based on choice rather than ownership. In November 1859, we married legally, or as legally as possible for an interracial couple. A Quaker minister who didn't care about racial boundaries performed the ceremony in a small church. It wasn't recognized by most authorities, but it felt real to us. I take you, Delilah Freeman, to be my wife, I said, my voice trembling. I take you, Thomas Callahan Freeman, to be my husband, she responded, adding my name to hers. We were truly married now. Two people who'd escaped impossible situations and found love in the ruins. The war came in 1861. Neither of us could fight. I was too weak and women didn't serve. But we contributed in other ways. Our home became a stop on the Underground Railroad. Delilah, using her knowledge and experience of slavery, helped newly escaped people adapt to freedom. I used my legal knowledge to help free black people navigate complex documentation requirements. We met Frederick Douglass once when he came to Cincinnati to speak. After his lecture, we approached him, and Delilah told him our story. He listened intently, then smiled. You've both taken your freedom in different ways. Mrs. Freeman, you've taken it from a system that tried to own you. Mr. Freeman, you've taken it from a system that tried to define you by your physical limitations. Both of you have proven that freedom is about choice, not circumstance. It was one of the proudest moments of my life. We never had biological children. My sterility was real and permanent. But in 1865, after the war ended, we adopted 3 children. Formerly enslaved children whose parents had died or disappeared during the chaos. We named them carefully. Sarah, after my mother. Frederick, after Douglass. And Liberty, because that's what they represented. We raised them in freedom. Taught them to read and write. Sent them to schools that accepted black children. We taught them they were valuable, that their worth wasn't determined by society's prejudices, but by their own character and choices. Sarah became a teacher, educating freed slaves in reading and mathematics. Frederick became a doctor, serving Cincinnati's black community. Liberty became a lawyer who fought for civil rights, using the law to tear down the same structures that had once enslaved her mother. I lived longer than anyone expected. The doctors who'd examined me at 19 and pronounced me unfit for breeding had predicted I wouldn't live past 30. But I made it to 42, 23 years with Delilah. 23 years of a life I'd built through choice rather than circumstance. I died in 1882 of pneumonia, the same illness that had killed my mother. Delilah held my hand as I slipped away. Did I do right? I whispered, barely audible. Leaving everything. Bringing you north. Was it worth it? Tears streamed down her face. Thomas, you gave me freedom. You gave me dignity. You gave me love. You gave me a life where I'm a person, not property. You gave me children who will grow up free. Yes, it was worth everything. I love you, Delilah Freeman. I love you, Thomas Freeman. Those were my last words. Delilah lived another 18 years, dying in 1900 at age 65. She spent those years working for civil rights, using her voice to tell the story of slavery and freedom, teaching young people about the importance of choosing justice over comfort. We're buried together in Spring Grove Cemetery in Cincinnati, under a shared headstone that reads Thomas Beaumont Callahan Freeman 1840-1882 and Delilah Freeman 1835-1900, married 1859. They chose freedom over comfort, love over convention, and proved that human worth cannot be determined by physical ability or social status. Our 3 children all lived successful lives of service. Sarah's school educated over 1,000 freed slaves. Frederick's medical practice served Cincinnati's black community for 40 years. Liberty's legal work helped dismantle segregation laws and protect civil rights. In 1920, Liberty published a book titled From Property to Partnership, the story of Thomas and Delilah Freeman. It told our story the white man's society called unfit for breeding, and the enslaved woman's society called property, and how we both found freedom and love by rejecting the labels others put on us. This is the story of Thomas Beaumont Callahan Freeman and Delilah Freeman, who left Mississippi in May 1859 and built a life in Cincinnati, Ohio. It's the story of a man's society called defective and a woman's society called property, who proved that human worth isn't determined by physical capability or legal status, but by the choices we make and the dignity we afford ourselves and others. Historical records document our existence. Thomas's birth in 1840, his medical examinations in 1858, and the trust fund withdrawals in 1859. Delilah's sale to Judge Callahan is recorded in plantation ledgers from 1850. Cincinnati city directories list Thomas Freeman as a law clerk from 1859 to 1882 and Delilah Freeman as a seamstress from 1859 to 1900. Our marriage, while not recognized by state law, was recorded by the Quaker Meeting House that performed the ceremony. Our children's birth records and adoption papers survive in Cincinnati archives. Our gravestone remains in Spring Grove Cemetery, visited occasionally by descendants and historians interested in unconventional stories of freedom and love from the slavery era. The story challenges assumptions about disability, race, and worth. Thomas wasn't broken because his body didn't develop normally. He was intelligent, moral, and capable of profound courage. Delilah wasn't property, despite the law saying she was strong, intelligent, and deserving of freedom and self-determination. And Judge Callahan's plan, meant to ensure his legacy, instead catalyzed something far more valuable. 2 people finding freedom and building lives based on choice, dignity, and love. If Thomas and Delilah's story moves you, if you believe human worth transcends physical ability and legal status, if you believe love and freedom can triumph even in the darkest times, then share this story. Remember